And we're on.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the House Environment and Energy Committee. This afternoon, we're taking up S 305 and amendments thereto. And we are going to start by hearing from representatives from Rygate. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Bridget Morris with Morris Strategies. I'm here on behalf of my client, Rygate Associates. And I'm joined by Andy Boutin, who's from Pellergy, who is constructing a project that we're working on at Rygate Biomass Plant. So I thought it would make sense to just start with an overview of the plant and the legislative timeline so you can understand why we're here today and what we're asking for. So the Rygate Biomass Plant's been operational since 1993, produces 20 megawatts of baseload power using selective catalytic reduction and emissions control, produces 160,000 megawatt hours a year, and has 21 employees and a number of interested parties who provide the biomass resources as well. Produces $2 million a year in wages and benefits and distributes more than 4,000 tons of wood ash per year, $350,000 annually to the state and municipal and state taxes, and currently operates with a power purchase agreement price of 10 cents a kilowatt hour. The renewable energy credits are shared 10% for Rygate Associates and 90% for Vermont Utilities. That's through the standard offer program, which in 2011 was established by the legislature. And in 2012, the PUC set this PPA rate for 10 years, which expired in 2022, at a 10 cent a kilowatt hour rate, at which the utilities have to purchase the power from Rygate. And then in 2011 or 2021, the legislature extended that for 2 years to November 1 of 2024, where it remains today, the current PPA. In 2022, the legislature then enacted Act 155, which we will get into here. Act 155 conditionally extended the PPA all the way out to 2032, but it was based on Rygate achieving an efficiency increase by 50%. It also established a timeline for which Rygate to achieve the efficiency improvements. And if they failed to meet the timeline, the PPA automatically goes away. So this is the timeline that Act 155 established. So by July 1 of last summer, the Rygate owners had to submit a contract for the construction of the efficiency piece and the engineering certification, which they did. And in October of the next deadline that they have to meet is actually making sure that these main components have been constructed. And if they fail to do that, then in November 1 of this year, that power purchase agreement goes away. In September of 2025, then the department would investigate Rygate and make a recommendation to the Public Utility Commission saying as whether or not Rygate's achieved the efficiency increase that's been mandated. And if they make a positive recommendation, then the Public Utility Commission starts a new rate case and determines a new rate for that period of November 1, 2026 to November 1 of 2032. So I'm going to pass it over to Andy, who's going to talk to you about what Rygate is doing to achieve that efficiency increase, and then we'll get into why we're here.
Okay, again, Andy Boutin with Pellergy. We're a local wood pellet boiler importer, installer, work in the renewable energy sector, heat pumps, a whole bunch of other things. As far as this project goes, we've been brought in as the wood pellet mill advisor. We ran a wood pellet mill for a couple of years down in West Windsor, Vermont, before its demise due to engineering issues and other issues. But the overall concept to increase the plant's efficiency by 50% is to reclaim heat from the stack. The plant's low efficiency is due to sending so much of that heat up the stack. So per Act 155, getting that efficiency upgrade has been engineered using Wilson Engineering, as well as quite a few engineers supplying the equipment itself. We have civil engineering, air quality, noise study to meet the Act 250 requirements, and have down selected the contractor for the actual pelletizing equipment and the dryer equipment, which is Prodessa as the facility contractor here. Prodessa is an overseas organization. So the idea is to use this waste heat to dry wood chips. This waste heat is very low quality heat. And so it's a very specialized dryer system that has to be employed. It'll be basically the first biomass power plant in the US to accomplish something like this, to increase their efficiency, number one, but also to use waste heat, which is, again, very common practice in Europe. This equipment comes out of Europe. It's a Swiss engineered company doing the heat reclamation. So it's very proven technology. It happens to be very expensive technology, so it's not well employed or employed at all that we know of throughout North America.
Would you mind going back a slide though?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a paragraph, if I missed it, one more. Back one.
Oh, sorry.
Did I miss it? You have a bullet over here, main regulatory approvals. But I don't think you talked about that. Do you have those approvals?
I think we have a
So
separate slide.
we're going to get to that. We'll walk you through, which is part of why we're here, is the Act 250 process and the delay. I should have really started by saying that the Act 250 process is the reason we're here. We're asking for a 1-year extension to this timeline because that process is taking some time. But we do have the details to all of that. We'll get into that.
Yeah. So we will get to those details on that.
Representative Sakowitz has a question.
Yeah, hello over here. Thank you for this. You mentioned that the heat that you're trying to recover is low quality heat. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
It's not high temperature. So it's basically we're dealing with a low temperature heat, and when you're dealing with low temperature heats, on the order of 120, 130 degrees Fahrenheit year round. So as a result, there's not much that you can actually accomplish with that heat. So the dryer system that's being designed and employed here is called a belt dryer system. Literally think of it as a big conveyor belt of a mesh material, wood chips in a thin layer set up top, and we blow air up through at nominally about 109, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Low and slow drying process. You'll see some project layouts. It takes hundreds of feet of dryer in order to dry wood chips this way. The benefits being you can use low quality heat, low temperature, low grade heat, and very little off gassing. So very little VOC off gassing. So it can be an efficient process that way. Okay, to move forward. Okay. So this is the belt dryer that I was talking about. The gentle warming of pellets, the low VOCs, they're basically the lowest emitting dryers as far as pollutants into the atmosphere. So the distinction here is that we're not going to be burning any more fuel at the plant in order to dry these wood chips. Where it's simply a recovery of energy that is not being utilized today. So there's no additional combustion, no additional emissions. And again, that all cascades into our air quality permitting and permitting process through EPA. This is the overview layout of the site. What you see in blue is kind of easily looked at from afar. Those happen to be wastewater, stormwater basins, retention ponds, but it kind of outlines the project. You see my pointer if I do this a little bit. The dryer system, if you don't mind, I'll just stand up and point out some things here. This is the dryer system, the belt dryer. You can see kind of its relative size. The existing power plant is over here, and this is where the existing stack is. Sorry to put my back here. This is the existing stack where the heat recovery equipment will be located. The water lines will bring this heat over to the dryer assembly. We have a truck on the offloading. This is all wood chip storage. This is basically log yard and wood chip storage. And then the pellet mill is this little piece actually right here. And then we have a pellet bagging facility as well. So the output of this whole development will be Vermont's third operational wood pellet mill, on a scale larger than the other mills that are there today. So any questions regarding layout?
What is the scale?
About 90,000 ton a year. To put it in perspective, the Vermont Wood Pellet Company down in North Carolina, Vermont, it's about 25,000 ton a year. Richford, I think, just came online within the past few months, and I don't think they've surpassed 10,000 ton a year. So this is definitely a larger scale facility than what we see in Vermont, but equal to that in neighboring states across the border in New Hampshire and on the other side in New York as well.
Representative Pat.
And just quickly, how would the pellets be distributed and marketed to people? I know there are fuel dealers and others that are selling wood pellets now.
Right. Good question. This will not be a retail facility, so they'll sell to the existing dealers within Vermont. So the Borns Energy, the Vermont Renewable Fuels. Currently, Vermont Renewable Fuels is bringing pellets in on rail from Alberta, from northern Alberta. They do have a rail siding here in Rygate. There are some plans to be able to develop that in the future, other phases. But for now, trucks will be able to come in and load bulk pellets at the mill directly, and bagged pellets as well. So bagged pellets will be going out. The goal is to offset the number of pellets coming in from Canada. So we're looking at an equivalent quality of pellet production of these Canadian softwood pellets coming down from as far away as northern Alberta. A lot of bag product coming over from Quebec, and we believe it can compete because of the reduced trucking. So you can only take 30 tons per truckload, and we're currently burning thousands upon thousands of tons coming out of Canada. So,
Representative Tory.
Thank you. Just something to flag, because you mentioned bags. And I've been hearing from constituents who cannot recycle their pellet bags, and they're really concerned about that. Is that something that you would have the ability to?
the plastics industry has done a magnificent job leading us to believe that all plastics are recyclable. And so every bag is marked with the recyclable stamp on it and the number 4 label. And the problem is that film recycling, plastic recycling of films is just not viable here. So yes, they can be recycled, but it has to be taken to the specialized recycling center, bags turned inside out, all dust removed from them. So while technically they can be recycled, the practical nature of it is that they're not. And so as a company like Pellergy, we've been promoting bulk wood pellet systems. We set up the very first bulk pellet delivery trucks within the state. We've helped companies like Borns Energy, Vermont Renewable Fuels develop their bulk delivery trucks. We install bulk delivery systems, bulk handling systems, so that a truck can come and you get rid of the bags altogether. Ideally, that's where everything goes. Practically, we're quite a ways off from that.
Representative Smith and Satcowitz.
Thank you. Are you processing hardwood chips or softwood chips or both?
The mill will be 100% dedicated to softwood, particularly eastern white pine, because of the lack of other markets for it. This is kind of what we, in my previous pellet mill, we zeroed in on as well. Typically, when you're looking at forest from a forest management perspective, to increase the growth in the forest, increase your total value, getting the white pine out is key. And there's really a lack of other markets for that. So when we looked at where can we not compete, anything hardwood, we compete with the firewood market for low grade. So we didn't want to go there. And that left kind of the pulp industry and the declining paper mills and the other declining biomass power plants, like just across in Berlin, for example. So right now, 100% white pine.
Thank you.
Representative Sackles.
Yeah, so I thought you said that the lot of your wood coming from Canada, and so from Alberta. So there's eastern white pine.
That's typically spruce coming out of Canada. So the mill that we're bringing pellets in from Canada on rail right now, bulk rail, that's all mill residuals from dimensional lumber. So 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x12s. They're sawing spruce and they're taking their sawdust and their planer shavings and making pellets from them. So it's still softwood, but that's the softwood they have available. Very few pellets coming out of Canada are hardwood pellets. If any right now. There may be one manufacturer. Typically mills on this order of magnitude, so 80,000-90,000 ton a year, they're doing a mixed hardwood like Lignetics or New England Wood Pellet out of Jaffrey, New Hampshire, Curran Pellets up in Messina, New York. They just, whole tree chips, any species, they don't care. They bring in mixed hardwood, they mix it with hardwood, softwood. But to compete in the market, a softwood pellet, a pine pellet makes actually the highest grade, highest quality of wood pellet. Kind of counterintuitive to those of you or us who have grown up burning cordwood or have a fireplace. You kind of always say, oh no, I want to burn hardwood. Pellets are the opposite. You're taking pine, you're drying it, and you're condensing it, you're compressing it, and making little hardwood logs. So it's all in the processing.
So I'm feeling, maybe I missed something, but I'm feeling a little confused.
Sure.
I thought so you have pellets coming from Canada, but I thought you said that you were focusing on eastern white pine as,
Correct.
so it sounds like you're using both.
So the idea is to offset those pellets coming in from Canada. So as far as a marketplace, like we can build all these pellets, but what do we do with them? We're looking to offset the market. We're looking to keep the Canadian pellets out of the market essentially and compete on
So
that.
you're not using the pellets from Canada.
So currently,
See,
We
Vermont
are.
consumers use them.
the consumers are currently
That's-
using.
That's okay,
Yes.
my mistake. That's what I missed.
Exactly. No, currently, most of the highest quality pellets outside of Vermont Wood Pellet Company are coming down from Canada. So we're looking to produce a pellet that exceeds that quality of those Canadian pellets so that we can disrupt that market.
And so you're using eastern white pine, and so
Correct.
what's the nature of that supply? Where is that all coming from? And why is it coming? Are
Right.
those trees coming, or those parts of trees coming to you?
So we've been told by multiple studies, by multiple groups, that there is an overabundance of white pine within about 150-mile radius of us, which is kind of stretching out to the outer bands of coming in to be able to supply this amount of wood fiber. And the white pine species is the one that needs to be cut frequently, and that there's little to no market for it. So that's kind of has been directing our.
So these are from managed woodlots.
Exactly.
People really want to get hardwood because that's the most valuable species from their economic perspective over a long time. And they're taking out whole pine trees of various sizes then?
Various sizes. Yeah, we take anything down to about 4 inches diameter. Yeah, and up to about 24. In our previous mill down in West Windsor, we kind of the same questions, a little bit different of a fiber loading there, a little different forest structure, but we didn't have to reach out beyond about 30 miles and just had an overabundance of white pine. So with again, no other markets. Some of them were trucking to Ticonderoga, some of New York, some of them were trucking to J Maine. And so having something locally is really advantageous to the loggers.
Representative Smith.
Thank you. What's the shelf life? Is there a shelf life difference between hardwood chips and softwood chips?
No, I mean, once you make a pellet, once you dry those chips, the pellets that come out of a mill are sterile. So there's no bacterial, there's no a fungal growth within them. and very little moisture. So they're controlled at about 6%, 8% moisture. So they can't sustain any type of degradation at that point from decomposition. So a pellet in a bag, I mean, we've seen 10 years, opening bags. The bags are perforated, so they do get some moisture wicking into them. And moisture is really the only concern. As long as you can keep them dry, out of standing water
Yeah.
and relatively low humidity, they'll last for a long time.
Okay.
So I guess it seemed like the guy to ask, all the energy that goes into making a wood pellet, really, like, what's the life cycle analysis on that? And are we really on the right side of the carbon equation by using them?
I think that's one of the kind of the neat things about this project for me is that we're recovering waste energy. So in most pellet mill operations, your second largest use of energy is burning more wood chips in order to dry chips as your feedstock for the pellets. So in this operation, we're taking waste heat that's going up the stack and drying those chips. The next biggest or the largest is electricity. And on this plant in particular, because Rygate is a power generation facility, they've done the equations to actually be able to utilize power on the plant itself to run the pellet mill, and those are in the base calculations for efficiency. So it's anticipated that very little, if any, power will have to come off the grid. So I haven't done the analysis on the actual sunk energy costs in these pellets in particular, but because of all these factors, they're going to be some of the, if not the lowest embodied energy, pellets that will be on the market. I think it's going to be something that we can market to. But outside of that, it's not really a question the industry explores.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of inputs that you're not mentioning that are pretty petroleum-based, high energy use.
Oh, yeah. I mean, right down to the logging,
Yes.
and the transportation. And I think that's one of the things we're looking at is what are the pellets that are coming from furthest away? How much embodied energy are they getting in diesel running trucks over borders from thousands of miles away? And that's what we're trying to cut into there as well. Really get that embodied energy as low as we can through transportation.
Yeah. And is anyone tracking how much energy it takes for the logging operations?
I don't know the answer to that question.
We can check on that, Madam Chair.
No, go for it.
May I move on?
Yes.
So for the Act 155 progress so far, as you may recall from the timeline, the first goal they had to meet was by June of last year, they had to file construction contracts and an efficiency certification with the PUC, which they did do. And I think actually I think this one makes more sense visually as far as all of the permitting. And by the way, this is all online. You have a copy of this that is required for this facility and the progress that they've made. As you can see, the first one being the Act 250 major permit application, which was filed in late December. Right now, most everything else is complete except we're waiting on the air quality permit, which is with A&R right now. We've heard some estimations that could be as early as June, but as late as September, that we actually receive that back. And then in order to get the final Act 250 land use permit. So at that point, basically that leaves us a month to then construct the main components according to Act 155 originally. And we can stay here or I can just move on. If you have any questions about the permitting process, we can always come back to this too.
And to be clear, you're representing Pellergy?
I'm representing Rygate, the owner of the plant. Yeah.
And Pellergy is contracted to Rygate as well, so we're representing Rygate as well.
Yeah. And we can get back to this, but I want to just show you here, this is why we're asking for this 1-year delay, because we would have had everything, all the main components constructed by October 1 of 2024, which is just, it's not working with the timeline of the Act 250 process, which is why we're asking for a 1-year delay. And by moving the construction back 1 year, that also moves everything else back by 1 year, which includes the Department of Public Service certification that we've met the efficiency standard, and the PUC rate case. It moves that back by 1 year as well. And that's really what our ask is.
The 10,000-foot overview on that is that the owners have taken every step all along the way to meet the timeline criteria, including filing for and having the Act 250 permitting process. The engineering is ready to go. It's literally ready to release to manufacturer. But without permitting and without those final permits coming through, there could be significant changes in that engineering that have to be rolled back in. So the entire project is effectively at a standstill awaiting Act 250 permit.
When did they submit their Act 250 application?
December 28th last year. And the hearing was in February, I believe.
Yes, and they were waiting, I mean, the PUC determined Rygate's submittal satisfied the requirements of Act 155. They were waiting on that too as well in December in order to actually file the Act 250 permit in December. And do you want to touch on some of the benefits of that?
Sure. Yeah. So the 3 to 4 new jobs in the area is extremely low. From my last analysis, I was up to 21 people at the pellet mill itself, because the mill has to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whenever the power plant is running, we have to be drying chips and making pellets. So that's a 3-shift operation, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and you can't do that with just three people.
Isn't this your slide?
It is, and it's something that I'm pointing out as inaccurate on here right now. This is a bare minimum that I would say you can take to the bank, but I can also say that we're going through those analyses right now and looking at what the actual staffing looks like and what the skill sets are, and we're looking at 3 to 4 times this amount as a minimum. Obviously, we'll be looking at increasing the overall logging foresting jobs in the area and buying hundreds of thousands of tons of more green biomass into the facility in the way of that white pine. We're looking at a property tax increase, approximately $200,000, just due to the additional development. This is about $18 to $23 million project, depending on how you cut it and where you cut it, between the pellet mill operations and the heat recovery. So we're looking at increased taxes there. We're also looking at being able to sell product to other existing Vermont fuel dealers in the way of either dried chips. Not every chip that gets dried through the facility, through the waste heat recovery, has to be turned into a pellet. We can also send dried chips out to existing suppliers and producers. That is a market that is emerging. I was just over in Germany 2 weeks ago looking at brand new wood chip boilers to be brought over, and they're all a dry chip boiler, which lower your emissions and also lower the amount of chips you have to put into a boiler. So for example, the boiler across the street that heats this whole facility, that's a wet chip boiler. If they were to tweak control systems, start accepting dry chips, their tonnage, the number of trucks going into that facility per year would go down. It wouldn't have to burn off as much moisture in the chip. So that's something we're looking at as well, kind of dovetailing into the clean heat standard. And overall, looking at the extended viability of the power plant. Without this, that the power plant does not exist. We've seen that time and time again. When the PPAs have been canceled or not extended in other states, namely Maine and New Hampshire, even mills from this particular owner, they go into bankruptcy. They cannot. They no longer cease to exist, including the closest one to us, which is over in Berlin, New Hampshire, that declared bankruptcy just a couple of weeks ago. So we're looking at extending this for the future of both the Rygate, the mill, and our renewable energy standards. As far as the environmental impacts, we're looking at this reduced carbon footprint through the use of wood pellets. Wood pellets are a carbon better technology. They're not a carbon perfect technology. Officially, as probably most of you are aware, through ISO regulations and international treaties, wood pellets are considered carbon neutral. I think that most studies here that we work off of say they're anywhere from 60 to 70% carbon better, depending on as local as you can get them. So we're really doing this, looking at that embodied energy, as we spoke about earlier, reducing truck traffic, potentially reducing moisture content in wood chips for other manufacturers to reduce theirs. If you have any other questions on that,
I think
we've gone through
touched
these.
on that. Any other questions?
Representative Bongartz.
Just for sense of scale. How many tons did you say that you'll be producing and selling of chips? No.
Yeah, the design output is 90,000 tons.
How does that compare to what you're burning in the system now?
Currently, I believe, wait, I wrote it down. Currently, they're at about 250,000 ton of green chips a year is what they bring into the facility. With our 90,000 ton output, we're looking at effectively doubling that. Because when you're dealing with white pine, for example, you're typically bringing in 2.4 tons of logs to make 1 ton of wood pellets. What you lose in the process is bark off of the logs, which is typically turned into mulch, landscaping mulch, sold to mulch contractors, and you're densifying that wood, and you're losing moisture content. So we're losing anywhere from design basis 55 to even as much as 60% moisture, so just water.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, I mean, just, you say you went over this requested amendments. You're asking for everything in green over here.
So to clarify, Madam Chair, we came into the legislature asking for a 1-year extension. There have been other parties, and I think Representative Farless Rubio will speak to some concerns that have come up. And since then, we've had a kind of a long process behind the scenes of negotiating on some draft amendments, which you will see presented to you today, that I have not seen the final version enough, but it's based on conceptions. We agree conceptually to I know you sent it to me, I just haven't quite read it yet. But I'm sure it's exactly what we have all asked for, in which case we are on board with that moving forward.
Thanks. Next we yeah, all right, thanks. Representative Pat, do you have a question for?
Yeah, I just in your own analysis, have you also, I know there has been some, I'd say at least high level analysis of the impact of having this kind of activity as part of forestry economy in terms of preserving forest land rather than it being subdivided. Do you have any I know that would be a rough estimate, but have you done any looking into that in that direction?
It's really hard to say. I think there's probably others that are more qualified to speak to, the impact of an additional, 250,000 tons of white pine being purchased on a yearly basis into that area. Obviously we pull from a wood basket that is largely Vermont, but also extends into New Hampshire and even into Maine as well. But you're right. I mean, without a market for your logs through a managed forest plan, your land becomes more valuable to subdivide and develop. And I think that, landowners, we face this every day. So that's another reason, kind of keying in on that white pine, to give a market to where there's not much of one right now.
Thank you. All right, with that, I think we'll hear from Legislative Council.
Okay. Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. So you should have just gotten draft 3.1 of a proposed amendment to S 305 on baseload power. And you will recall that 30 VSA Section 809 is the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement, which is part of the renewable energy chapter. And this statute is about a baseload renewable power plant, and that is code for RIGATE. That is the one plant that satisfies the requirements of that statute. And so this entire statute 8009 relates to the RIGATE facility. So in 2022, there was an amendment to this statute and Act 155 that put in this requirement for RIGATE to increase its overall efficiency of its plant in order to get an updated, essentially, power purchase agreement. And so you did just hear some of that information already, but I can go into additional detail on that statute if you'd like. Otherwise, on page 1, it's extending the dates, as just mentioned, by 1 year. So moving from November 1, 2026 to November 1, 2027, the PUC shall determine for the period beginning November 1, 2027 and ending November 1, 2032, the price to be paid to a plant used to satisfy the base load renewable power portfolio requirement, which is RIGATE. So this is the paragraph that establishes that the PUC shall set the rate to be paid. That rate is what the utilities need to pay. So in general, Section 8009 establishes that all of the electric utilities, except Burlington Electric, because they have a power facility, a baseload power facility, need to purchase their pro rata share of the output of the baseload renewable power plant, RIGATE. So they divide it up by their percentage. So GMP has the largest, and then the other utilities based on their pro rata usage. So the PUC sets the rate to be paid by those utilities to RIGATE for their power. There is an existing rate in statute that is set to expire November 1, 2026. At which time, if the rest of the elements of the statute are complied with, PUC will set a new rate for them going forward to end on November 1, 2032. So there are,
Makes sense to extend one on one end and not the other.
well, that is a policy question. This update was passed in 2022. And so they were given a 10-year window at that time. So you could choose, if you would like, to extend it to 2033 or 2034. If you would like, this is the request before you. On page 2. So in Act 155, there was the subsection K was added to establish the co-location and efficiency requirements. You just heard about the project that has been identified to meet these co-location and efficiency requirements. So then on page 2, the dates are being changed here for the rest of the deadlines in this process. So on or before October 1, 2025, the owner of the plant shall submit to the commission and the department a certification that the main components of the facility used to meet the requirement of subdivision 1 of this subsection have been manufactured and that the construction plans for the facility have been completed. So there's 2 things happening here. So one is the date change of 1 year, because otherwise this deadline is October 1, 2024, and I think you just heard they are probably not going to meet that currently. But also currently the statute reads that the main components of the facilities used to meet this requirement have to have been completed by then. And so this is actually adding additional language that I just want to flag is different. It says they have been manufactured and that the construction plans have been completed.
So what did it say before? I'm just trying to, I'm looking at it in statute. It was silent on that before?
It just said completed. So there have been discussions about what does completed mean. In drafting, I thought it was fairly clear that that meant constructed
Yes.
at the site. It did not say that. And in the version that may have been posted last week, it said completed at the plant, as was my suggestion originally. But this says manufactured and the construction plans of the facility have been completed. I'm not entirely sure where that specific phrase came from.
Bridget Morris?
Chime in. Again, on behalf of Rygate Associates, from our research into the discussions back in 2022 in House Energy and Technology, that's where the language was discussed. And from what we have determined, I think the intent was that those components would be completed, not necessarily assembled and up and running, which is why the 8 to 9 months later, the department then comes and certifies if they're in fact meeting the Act 155 criteria, which is up and running. So I think the plant owner at the time, when they were moving through Act 155, that was the intention. Would manufacture these, and then they would have 8 months to bring them together and have them up and running for the department to certify and make the recommendation to the PUC.
So you're saying you cannot have this thing constructed by October 1, 2025?
I'm not saying that they cannot, Madam Chair. I think it's in their best interest to get it up and running, but because we're waiting on the Act 250 permits, from what I've been told is that they cannot sign off on the engineering, and they can't, the engineering contracts and engineering plans until all of the permits are back in hand. And when they do that, then they start construction of those pieces, which could take up to a year, is my understanding. And then they still have to get them to the site and assemble them and get them up and running by the time the department comes to certify them.
So have these components been manufactured?
The design engineering has been done. In as much as possible, the components that have been selected are proven technologies. There's nothing radically new, but it takes time to manufacture these. The pellet mill, for example, the mill itself will be manufactured in essentially shipping containers and then brought up together on site, locked together on site, and integrated together with these shipping containers. So the technology that they've chosen is different than anything else that exists again in New England because of that, but it's really to meet the timeline. In order to build a pellet mill from scratch, from groundbreaking and everything, you'd be looking at easily 18 to 24 months. So in this compressed timeline, due to Act 155, the engineering was done so that most of the mill could be constructed off-site, brought on site. There's obviously site preparation that has to be done. There has to be the whole heat reclamation system, a lot of other work. But the longest lead items have been designed and engineered to be brought on site, 90% manufactured, so that the on-site work is very minimal.
Where's the completion date in this amendment?
That's the date that the PUC certifies.
September 11, 9/26. I don't know.
I'm not answering this question.
When you,
Representative Sibilia?
Well, the PUC has to certify.
the department investigates and submits a recommendation to the commission by September 1 of 2026 in our proposed new timeline. Right now, it's September 1 of 2025.
It has to be operational and
Operational
certified
meeting
by
the-
that date.
Meeting the criteria.
Essentially, you're asking for a 2-year extension based on the language that we're looking at.
Well, so just from the perspective of the company owners and from speaking with their previous representation, I think this is really just a 1-year extension. Of course, we understand that the language could be interpreted differently. I do see that. But that was not the intent originally.
So on page 2, and you can see in the next 2 paragraphs, subsection 4 and subsection 5, the dates have been changed there. So in subsection 4, if the contract and certification requirements of subsection 2 are not submitted to the commission and the department on or before July 1, 2023, which already happened, or if the certification under subdivision 3 is not submitted to the commission and department on or before October 1, 2025, so that's moving out from 2024 to 2025, then the obligation under this section for each Vermont retail electricity provider, aka utility, to purchase a pro rata share of the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement shall cease on November 1, 2025. And the commission is not required to conduct the rate determination provided for in subsection D of this section. So then the next date is on or before September 1, 2026, the department shall investigate and submit a recommendation to the commission on whether the plant has achieved the requirements of subdivision 1. If the department recommends that the plant has not achieved the requirement of subdivision 1, the obligation under this section shall cease on November 1, 2026, and the commission is not required to conduct the rate determination. And then finally, on page 3, the last date is updated. So after November 1, 2027, the owner of the plant shall report annually to the department, and the department shall verify the overall efficiency of the plant for the prior 12-month period. If the overall efficiency of the plant falls below the requirement of subdivision 1, the report shall include a plan to return the plant to the required efficiency within 1 year. And then that brings you back to subdivision D, which is on the first page, where the PUC then starts their rate determination for 2027 to 2032. So you have, in the prior legislation, you extended the existing rate for these additional years. There will be, if all goes according to this schedule, there will be a new rate determination in 2027 to for the last 5 years of the contract. And then, okay, so then there's a new session law provision on pages 3 and 4. So at the bottom of page 3, biomass suppliers and construction. The owner of the plant used to satisfy the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement under section 8009 shall offer to enter into written contracts with each of its biomass suppliers, so on to page 4, establishing customary commercial terms, including payment timelines, supply volume, and term length.
Offer to?
Yes. For biomass suppliers that are not a party to a supply contract with the plant owner as of April 1, 2024, the plant owner shall offer to provide supply contracts to ensure payment to such suppliers for biomass deliveries within 7 business days of the invoice date. I just want to flag that I don't fully understand the distinction between subsection A and B.
One has an offered contract, and apparently one doesn't.
The plant, and maybe it has to do with the date. I'm not sure. The plant owner shall ensure that the payments made to each biomass supplier are timely, accurate, and valid. In the event any payment is not timely made under the terms of a supplier contract, the plant owner shall pay a late payment penalty to the supplier equal to 5% per week. The plant owner shall hire an independent certified public accountant to review the timeliness of the plant owner's payments to its suppliers and to prepare a quarterly report detailing its findings. The quarterly report shall also include a status report on the design and construction of the facility proposed to meet the requirements of 30 VSA section 8009K. Each quarterly report shall be verified under the penalty of perjury and provided to the General Assembly and the Department of Public Service. The requirements of this section shall apply until the commission establishes the new avoided cost paid to the plant in accordance with 8009D, after which point the obligations under this section shall cease. So until the 2027 date, the plant owner shall offer to have contracts with suppliers, and they shall have an independent CPA to review the timeliness of their payments.
Can you go through E again, though? The requirements of the section shall apply. What happens?
That's what I just said. This is a time limited provision that applies until the new rate establishes. So after 2027 and the new rate is established, they don't have to have an independent CPA and they don't have to have contracts.
New rate for the electricity. Isn't this? This is for the loggers, I thought.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
So the new rate here being referenced is for the PPA, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that will be developed through a public process
Yes.
where presumably the suppliers could weigh in and potentially secure this term for themselves going forward.
I don't know.
Well, I'm saying, so what's happening here is the terms end when the new PPA is approved. And so the PPA will be developed through a public process. And as a part of that public process, presumably the suppliers could be engaged and could make requests. The PUC is not here, but the department is. If we could throw them a lifeline.
I don't know that I can. I'm likewise
Yeah.
not sure that I don't think the entire PPA would be renegotiated. I think it's more a matter of the PUC doing the calculation and plugging in a new, instead of 10 cents, it will be X cents. So I am also not sure that there'd be room to kind of renegotiate the whole contract, which is the PPA, which is between the utilities and Rygate.
Yeah. I could look into that a little bit more, but not sure.
And what happens at Rygate if this pellet plant doesn't get built?
So the timelines in here, so the next timeline, there's if you were to go with this bill, and this would become the law, so they'd have to have construction plans by 2025, and then the department will investigate if they have achieved the requirements. So the requirements are to have a co-location project and that the plant overall efficiency increases to 50%. And that deadline is September 1, 2026. At which point, if they have not met that deadline, the obligation for utilities to purchase the power ceases. And by that point, the PUC would not start the new rate determination.
Members have further questions for legislative council? Not seeing any. Thanks, Helen. Melissa Bailey.
And thanks for having me back. Melissa Bailey with the Department of Public Service. So just can say overall, at a high level, the department is supportive of the provisions of the latest draft, the amendment, and sorry, just getting there. So you've heard the background that Act 155 essentially extended a 10-year contract that had been in place from 2012 and set to expire in 2022 and put the requirements that the efficiency project be built at the Rygate plant. We understand that there have been delays in the permitting that you've just heard about specifically for the efficiency project. And so we're comfortable with this 1-year extension again to essentially all of the remaining deadlines that Rygate is subject to. And in addition, provides this clarity around what it means to have the components constructed, because it sounds like there were different legal interpretations of the existing language. So the bill allows for a 1-year extension, clarifies the piece about having the components constructed, and pushes back the time at which the new rate would be set. And then again, provides these provisions around timely payment to suppliers, which we feel is important for the plant to continue its PPA. Understanding from Rygate's perspective that if the PPA were to cease, which would happen if they fail to meet this upcoming October deadline in 2024, we understand from Rygate that they just would be in an untenable economic situation and the plant would close down. Just for a little bit of context, the way the department looks at this type of decision, the PPA that we've talked about, I think just to explicitly clarify, this is a must-buy PPA, so the utilities don't have a choice about purchasing this resource. And the plant receives a rate that is different from what it would be eligible to receive if it were just selling power and capacity and renewable energy credits on the market. So there's an exchange there, right? You have a guaranteed buyer at a higher price. And we look at, what are the benefits then that Vermont gets for paying that higher price? So initially we look at ratepayer economic value and then any other value streams kind of that the plant would, they would bring. And we do see those in economic development benefits, the taxes, the employment, and this potential to have a local supply of wood chips for advanced biomass heating in the state. So again, the current contract is 10 cents a kilowatt hour. That is above market prices. That's ratepayers are paying more for this power than they are for other sources of power, although not all other sources of power. Rygate power kind of sits between market power at the lower end and, some of our more expensive solar resources at the higher end. So that 10 cents is kind of in the middle. And another benefit of Rygate is that I don't think has been touched on. It is what we call baseload power. So it's available around the clock, which is different than most of the other resources cited within Vermont. I think Ms. Morris referenced about 150,000 megawatt hours are generated at the plant annually, and that's about 2 to 3% of Vermont's overall power supply needs. So it's a small component, but it's an important, baseload resource. Again, there's the economic, the local economy benefits, the wood industry, and the taxes and employment. We think, looking at that, the department sees this as a reasonable balance to continue paying, again, the slightly higher rate and keeping Rygate online and able to pursue the efficiency project. We're supportive of the proposal, and I'm happy to take any questions.
First up, questions?
I should say, sorry, the only other piece of data I was going to share was that the thermal efficiency of the plant is currently about 22%. And again, that we think the efficiency project would increase the overall efficiency by 50%. So again, really think it's important to get that project built and to allow adequate time for that to happen, as opposed to losing the resource.
Just to be clear, that means going from 2022 to 53, 50% more.
My understanding was 50% more. I think Ledge Council just said increase to 50%, but I don't think that is, I believe it's an increasing the efficiency by 50%.
Take us to 33.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And the department would need to hire consultants and certify that in 2026 under the proposal.
Melissa, what are the baseload power generation plants in the state of Vermont?
So really it would just be Rygate and McNeil, biomass plant in Burlington. Would be our only baseload resources.
You would
Let's say
consider
some of
not
the
hydro?
Some of the hydros would probably be considered, most of the hydros. Although many of them really have seasonal fluctuations based on water. So I don't think most of them would be truly considered baseload. Hydro-Quebec, of course, but that's an import. McNeil runs year round and has.
I can't hear you if you're speaking.
I didn't know if that was all year long or not, because I thought McNeil shuts down in the summer.
My understanding is McNeil has some planned outages each year, but those can be planned around rather than being a truly intermittent resource like solar, wind.
Right. Thank you for joining us. Representative Pop.
I just, a quick comment, because those of us who were on the previous Energy and Technology Committee dealt with this and actually toured the plant at the time. At the time, the Rygate plant was considering other uses for the waste heat, which I think would have been beneficial, but they were to use them for other industrial purposes, not specifically for energy related purposes. And so I think that would have been good as well, but I like better that this would be creating a local source for wood pellets.
You, Melissa. And I think we have Sam Lincoln on the Zoom joining us. Welcome, Sam.
I'm here, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Ken.
Thank you. I'll start whenever you're ready.
You're ready.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. For the record, my name is Sam Lincoln. I own and operate a Master Logger certified mechanized timber harvesting business in Randolph Center. In addition to my career as a farmer and logger in Central Vermont, I also served 4 years as the Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation from 2017 through 2020. As a logging contractor, at times, I have been an indirect supplier at Rygate Power Station since the mid-2000s, providing wood fuel to the plant through third-party chipping and trucking contractors. The market provided by Rygate Power Station is incredibly important to Vermont's forest economy and provides forest landowners with options to market forest products harvested from their land, often in accordance with forest management plans. The effort to upgrade the efficiency of the plant and utilize more locally harvested forest products and offset the fuel are important goals that I support. My testimony will be really brief and focused on the biomass suppliers section on page 4. It is an industry standard for suppliers of forest products, plants, and purchasers of sawmills, firewood producers, power plants to be paid on a weekly basis for those deliveries. I am aware of issues with the timeliness of payments to the fuel suppliers that have gone on sporadically for several years. I believe the language here will be an important requirement to put in place to ensure the suppliers defined in the language are paid on time, particularly at a time when the weather has had an extraordinarily negative impact on the cash flow and finances of all logging and forest trucking businesses. I would respectfully ask that the committee include it as they consider the bill, and I would be happy to take questions.
Sure. I guess I'd be curious. Why don't these folks already just have contracts?
It's variable with many businesses. Frequently, businesses done on handshake or by someone's word, and at times they are done by contract. And it's that part of it's not always consistent to have written contracts. It's still somewhat of a like I said, a handshake basis with some people, but some of these have been multi-generational businesses doing business together with each other for a long time and not having any issues. But we believe there is a need here to address this in this language.
It seems like existing contract law should cover this and that we're restating the obvious.
Well, we feel that with the benefit of the ratepayers providing a profit to the plant and having public support, that we believe this needs to be addressed because it has been an inconsistent payment timeliness, and that's why we're asking for it.
Yeah, I understand. And I don't mean to sound like I don't support the loggers getting paid because I 100% do. But it just seems like this language does it add, I'm going to ask our ledge counsel this question. Does this add any level of enforcement that doesn't already exist in
Yes.
statute? Okay.
Well, so contract law is tricky, especially if there isn't a written document, because the party that has been violated would need to then seek to go to court to enforce something and then bring evidence of past dealings. So the burden at that point is on the party that has been harmed. So yes, while they might prevail, they would have to bring a lawsuit potentially. And then that would be a burden on top of the fact that they, depending on how much they're out, there's a cost benefit analysis there, right? Like if they're, sorry, can I come over here?
Yeah.
So if a contract has been delayed by 3 or 4 weeks, but they still get paid, then the argument was, well, you did get paid, and perhaps there isn't if there's no contract, what's the penalty on that? Then they'd have to hire a lawyer to help them establish if there's been damages and what those damages would be. So at that point, without a contract, it is a burden on the injured party to then bring this person to court.
Yeah, but
So yes, it could get sorted out.
this language is not guaranteeing a contract. It says it shall offer to enter into a written contract, which I guess means they would have to come to the table. But then it also has a second paragraph for suppliers not party to a contract, which is, I'm hearing what we have right now.
Madam Chair, might I offer some insight on this one?
You may.
So I can't speak directly from the Rodegate perspective, but from my experience running and operating a pellet mill for a couple of years, and I think Mr. Smith has alluded to this as well. Many in the logging industry don't operate off of contracts. They bring a truck over your scales and they expect to get paid at the end of the week for what they bring over your scales. That's kind of the unspoken industry standard. Whereas when you're operating a business, a lot of times you work on net 30 kind of terms. So if I don't have a contract with someone, and we didn't have contracts with over 70 loggers and suppliers that brought material in, we would say, look, you're on net 30 terms with us. And that doesn't mean a lot to some people. And we would have loggers consistently show up and say, you haven't paid me in 2 weeks. Where's my check for all the logs that have brought in the last 2 weeks? And we said, well, our standard terms are 30 days to pay, and we don't have another written contract with you, so you'll get paid within the 30-day time frame. And I think that operating in that mode has created a lot of tension, and it created a lot of tension, for our operation as well. So by mandating that you have to at least offer a contract, and you have to offer a contract with the 7-day terms that they're used to, it gives the loggers that leverage to be able to say, hey, I want to enter this contract. I know I'm going to get paid on time. And if I'm not, you're going to pay a penalty for it. And I just think that, it's trying to alleviate that issue of kind of running big business on like a net 30-day term. And if you want a contract, we'll give you a contract. Otherwise, bring your logs and we'll cut you a check when we can cut you a check. Bridging that gap between the logger's expectation of, I've got my pay slips on the seat of my cab, in my truck, and I want to get paid every 7 days for it. And I think that's basically what this serves to achieve.
Sam Lincoln.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One way that a couple things is I appreciate your highlighting this. It is it is unusual, I think, for businesses to ask for something like this to be inserted. But again, we believe it's necessary in this market, in the wood energy market, in the pulp and paper market. It is typical for logging contractor suppliers to have written contracts. The sawmill world, it's a lot more of word of mouth. I think I would adjust what I said to you previously about that. For the history of the Rygate Power Station, prior to the current ownership, the payments were made to logging contractors on time. And the suppliers that go to Burlington Electric are paid on time. The paper mills, the pulp mills in the region, they are paid on time. And this particular plant gets a favorable treatment from the General Assembly in Vermont. And some of that is based on the assumption that is trickling down to the forest economy and supply chain all the way back to landowners. And we've experienced for several years has been that that isn't always happening. And so that's why we're asking for that, because there's a lot at stake for the individual businesses that do not collectively bargain or have collective capacity. I'm not quite sure what the right legal terminology is to challenge a business that they rely on for much of their income. And so that might be too why you don't see a line of logging contractors that are suppliers of the plant here to testify on something that might not be favorable to their business relationship with them.
Mm.
They have a lot at stake, and financially and for their business logistics.
I guess, what happens if they don't do this, Ellen? Not us, if the Rygate doesn't abide by this session law.
Well, there's no direct enforcement provision. Yeah,
There's interest, Ellen, right?
well, there's interest in part of it. So, if they don't pay under the terms of a contract, it's requiring a contract term of penalty of 5%.
If they haven't paid, they're probably not gonna add 5%.
But if you're looking, there isn't a clear tie to whether or not it impacts whether or not their obligation to get the PPA rate is not clearly tied to that. It is a statutory obligation, or it's a session law provision that is being added, and session law provisions have the effect of law, so it would be a statute, but there isn't a clear enforcement mechanism.
Melissa Bailey.
Well, so the department, I was just going to point out that there is the quarterly reporting by the certified public accountant, which would come to the General Assembly as well as the department. So I think there's the timeliness with which you all would receive any concerns about payment. It's not enforcement, but it is a notification provision.
If I may, I would add that includes documentation through this to the auditor or the I can't remember what the account. It includes documentation through the CPA that then would be available.
CPA that they have to hire. Yep. Just saying. All right. Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. All right, members, let's take a break. Our next witness is at 2:30.